Good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, my Italian stops here, and I am looking forward to learning to speak Italian in the near future. And in fact, I have already started taking Italian lessons. Just this morning, I had the first one, and I don't use translation, or at least I didn't use simultaneous translation, especially when Maurizio was speaking, because I understood almost everything. I can understand Italian quite well, but I have more difficulty speaking it, so if I take headphones when I listen to your questions, it's because I want to be sure I understand, but I hope I can understand everything even without the help of headphones. I am absolutely delighted to be here today. It is a great privilege for me to be the general manager of Juventus. It's a club, one of the biggest clubs in the world, without a shadow of a doubt. I grew up watching this club for several reasons. First of all, the great players who have played in the past. And then I have always been attracted by organizations that are successful. And certainly Juventus has always been of this kind. And therefore, especially as regards the football sector, it has always been a model of efficiency. And therefore, so it was truly, I have always admired everything that Juventus has done in the past. I remember, in fact, when I was a scout, I came to the Delle Alpi for several years. I also participated in what was called at the time also another competition in Tokyo in 96 between Juventus and because in Japan this tournament was being played. So I appreciated the culture very much. I really appreciated the culture of Juventus in this sense. So I would also like to open with a series of topics, and I am sure that you are all eager to hear my words regarding my position on the organization. First of all, to confirm that Igor will be our coach for next season, not only for the Club World Cup, but for next season. So I have already made it clear to him on several occasions, and as I told him that it will go beyond the Club World Cup and also beyond next season. So we are working together. So I am absolutely aware of the fact that we are a very big club. There is a lot of speculation about what is happening, and but I want to reiterate very clearly. So for the 25-26 season, Igor Tudor will remain our coach. I hope even beyond. And now I would also like to talk about the role of Giorgio Chiellini. First of all, and perhaps I must first of all, I greet the president and I want to thank him for his presence here today. So Giorgio's role at the club will be that of director of football strategy, and we spoke with Maurizio, the chairman, also with the owner and with Giorgio. We have spoken clearly about what his role will be, so not only on the pitch, but he will also be technical director in some ways, in the sense that we will work closely together on different aspects of the club and from a footballing point of view, but also from a commercial marketing point of view. As Maurizio just said, it is a very important aspect. So, Giorgio's role, I could talk about it for 5 minutes, but we were part of the same UEFA committee. And obviously, I will no longer be part of that committee because now Giorgio will be the representative of Juventus also with regards to the league and the federation. And there are several aspects that we are working on together. Of course, the relationship with his brother is also helpful, but he has certainly started to consider the activities of the academy, which I am particularly passionate about and which interest me a lot. So Giorgio and I will move from football to marketing to sales. So we will move from one aspect to another, from one area to another, and we will continue to talk to each other with a focus on these two aspects. So we've been working very well together so far. I'm sure we'll continue to do that in the future, and no doubt. And for everyone involved in the club and also outside, well, that's going to be his role. Exactly. We have also created this football strategy committee where we will deal with all the issues, all the topics that go from the youth to the first team. And in this case, Giorgio will also be part of this. So if the question is whether Giorgio will take care of training or will he also take care of the transfer market, no, that's not what he will do. Third topic, I know regarding the first coach, there has been a lot of speculation regarding the sporting director, the technical director. So I would like to hire two types of people. So we will have a technical director who will take care of the transfers of the management. So he will also be part of the committee that we talked about. First, and who will be involved in everything concerning the transfer market. And we will also see especially regarding the transfer window. And always with an eye also to the academy. And will report directly to me. Then we will also have another director, so we said sporting director, and then the technical director, who will also report directly to me. And so it is not just a single role, but there are actually two roles. We have already discussed it extensively with Giorgio, with Maurizio, with the president, with the owners, to understand exactly which will be the best structure. We are absolutely convinced that this is the best structure we can have. That is, having a technical director who will take care of everything that concerns performance, therefore the analytical, medical part, and so on, therefore the first coach, the players, and so on. And I have a clear idea in my head of who the right person is for this type of role. Maybe you will ask me for names, but maybe I won't give them to you. But I have a clear idea in my head of the profile of the person who can fill this role. It's a process, but we don't want to be too hasty in making decisions. In short, I spent several years of my life doing this role, or rather being technical director and sporting director at the same time. So I know the role. And rather than being hasty in making certain decisions, we instead want to take our time. It's a recruitment process for these two key positions, and so it obviously doesn't happen overnight. So we want to decide the structure. Once we have decided on the structure, then we will also decide what kind of individuals we want to involve. So once we have decided what the profile of the people we are interested in is, then we will also start looking at the market. A fourth point I would like to touch on. I am happy to announce that we have reached an agreement with PSG Paris Saint-Germain regarding the extension of Konuan's loan. And so I actually spoke to the player last week, especially after the difficult match against Spain. So he has decided that he wants to play the Club World Cup with Juventus. So he will stay. So we had a pretty civil conversation with PSG about that. So the deadline for registration for the Club World Cup is today. And we haven't reached an agreement with Juventus about the loan for the season. So after the Club World Cup, but I'm pretty optimistic. I know that using the term optimistic in football is not so widespread, it is not so common, but I am quite optimistic that we will be able to reach an agreement with PSG for the loan for the entire 25-26 season, and therefore Paris Saint-Germain has not closed the door regarding the loan. And I know that the player wants to stay with us, the most particularly open player. So this is good news, not only for the Club World Cup, but also for next season. And last but not least, in France, in England, they say ladies first. Maybe I should have started with this. And I would also like to congratulate the women's first team for their incredible results this season. We were just talking about it before. And what will come next season then? You just have to win the Champions League. So hopefully we can actually get there. And I also have a passion for women's football. And I tried to develop that area when I was at Toulouse. So obviously I was particularly happy to see the trophies won by the Juventus women's team. So congratulations. But in case in Vielio ready to hear them. We begin as usual with questions. I ask you to introduce your newspaper and let's start with our channel, please.
Andrea Basanzoni, Juventus.com. Director, good morning and welcome. I'm here, Andrea Basanzoni, Juventus.com. I welcome you again. As you told us, it has been a very intense week. These are very intense days, and so I also ask you about your impressions of having met Juventus, of having entered Juventus, of having met the team, the facilities, and why not also your emotions. Thank you.
Maybe I should start with my emotions. It is, I have to say, a constant enthusiasm, and every morning when I wake up, I feel exactly this sensation. As I said, when I started, when I was a French child, at that age, obviously I idolized players like Platini, and I had never dreamed of becoming a player. I had always dreamed of becoming a coach, and the first coach I admired growing up was Trapattoni. So, speaking of memories and emotions, well, I don't want to tell you that I was a Juventus fan because it's not true, but I followed what Juventus did. I've always followed it, And so, obviously, this also defines the reason why I'm here now. And seeing the fact that, in short, it goes to testify my presence here today. As for the team, some have already returned from international commitments. Some still have to return between tomorrow and the next few days. So some have already started training again. Obviously, I can't wait to meet the rest of the team, the players, and above all, also all the coaching staff. We have already spoken about it with Giorgio. Precisely. We have already discussed some aspects that we would like to address also with the staff regarding the club and also all the various stakeholders, so all the people involved from the doctors, the psychologists, and so on. I obviously want to get to know everyone. There's a lot of things to do, and I think I have an idea of what the team can give if they want to stay true to themselves. So I told everyone that obviously it's a team, not just the team that plays, but there's also a team behind the team. So there's the team on the pitch and the team behind the scenes. They are all extremely important, so obviously we are all going in the same direction. As I told them last week, the moment we go to the Club World Cup, we are at Juventus. There is no other way to approach it. So we have to win. We have to go there to win. We still have to do everything possible to be able to win.
Giovanni Guardiola, Sky Sport, good morning. Giovanni Guardiola Sky Sport has clarified Tudor's speech. So, I ask you what convinced you, because in the last few weeks so many names have been linked to the Juventus bench. What convinced you, and if by chance the year you returned to La Liga Toulouse had also appreciated Tudor's work at Marseille, given that that year coincided? Thank you.
Yes, thanks for the question. Unfortunately, the year he was at Marseille, they beat us twice, understandably. And we even laughed about it because the first time I spoke to him on the phone, I said, "Do you remember what I told you afterwards? The Toulouse-Marseille match?" "Yes, yes, I remember very well," was his answer. I told him precisely the intensity and also the physical and mental endurance that your team put into that match that day. Well, aren't there many coaches in France who can reach that level with the team precisely that he was coaching? Yes, yes, I remember perfectly what you said at the time. And so I am absolutely aware that he did an exceptional job at Marseille. I know that Marseille wanted to keep him for the long term, and he certainly deserved to stay there even longer. But then they made another decision, which is absolutely respectable, and so that was precisely my experience with IGOR. Unfortunately, in fact, they beat us, but the intensity, as I said, especially this physical intensity, this mental intensity, this endurance, this resilience, and also the great commitment that his team showed in that season was truly impressive.
Fabiana Della Valle, Gazzetta dello Sport. Good morning. You talked about the Club World Cup, which will be the last objective of the current season. Then another one will begin. I wanted to know what your priorities are on the pitch, if you have already set yourself goals on the pitch and beyond. Priority in terms of potential wins or in terms of club structure.
Okay, if you have 2 hours, I can answer this question. Well, the first time I met the owners, I was asked, "What do you want to achieve?" And I said, "I want to do everything possible to win." I obviously can't guarantee anyone in this room or our fans, our supporters, my colleagues that we will win, but I can guarantee you that I will do everything in my power to win. I will do everything possible so whatever competition we go into. So if this answers your question, for me, it's very simple. Exactly what I have clear in my head without any hesitation. So obviously, when you look at the Juventus shirt, the only way to move forward is to try to win trophies and tournaments. Unfortunately, in football, there can be unforeseen events. There is luck. There is bad luck. There are also better teams. And just as there are worse teams, obviously it can happen. And so not we cannot control everything, but everything that is our power that we can control, we have to control 100% and therefore control things 100%. When you have a good coach, you also have good players. Then there are also good chances of winning. So obviously there can always be bad luck, but that's what happens in football. Anything can happen at any time. But trying to win will be my obsession. It is daily. So I want to pass on this passion to everyone in the club, and I think it's already part of the culture of the club, so I'll just try to maintain or just strengthen this culture. As for the second part of the question, that is, on the structure, I think I have already given you some rather strong indications on this dual role that we intend to create, that of sporting director and technical director. I think that's the way to go, and I've seen it in the United States, in other sports, even 10, 15 years ago or so. There are more and more clubs now in Europe too, not just the big ones that have started doing it. So, in my opinion, then I have played the role of sporting director, and I know how difficult and complicated it is. And therefore, football is becoming more and more global than ever. And therefore, the tasks are different. It becomes more and more demanding. So that's why we need to distinguish the role between technical director and sporting director. So, when we talk about the structure of the club, Giorgio's role, so the sporting director, the technical director, and obviously also my role. So these are the roles that will shape the club for the future.
Federica zone. Well, you remember that I said that I didn't use them, and since he was so direct with us and also showed that he has very clear ideas about the people he wants to bring to Juventus, I asked him if we can consider Vlahovic leaving and if he has already thought about what profile he wants at this point, maybe alongside Uman. His experience at Juve should continue for a long time, as he hopes.
Straight to the point. I spoke to Tucson just last week. To the player, then he should come back soon, and I want to talk to you about it to understand what he has in mind. So, if I look at what's happened recently, obviously he's a top player, and in some ways, maybe certain things didn't work out. And from the beginning of January until, the end of the season, there were obviously ups and downs. And so I realized that maybe what happened isn't enough. But I don't want to say that went well, that went badly. That's right, that's wrong. Whether the previous coach was right or wrong, I don't know yet. I have to talk to the player first and understand exactly what his feelings and impressions are. Then there is no doubt that he is a top player. We definitely need to understand the contractual situation. It depends on what he wants, what he feels, whether the contract will expire or not. But we need to understand what his intentions are, and also from a psychological point of view, what his position is, and also what his relationship with the club is. And then when I have all these elements, then I will then be able to actually make a decision.
Giovanni Albanese, Sport Italia. Good morning, Director. He talked about these new managerial figures. We also understood the great value that he wants to give to these figures. I ask if they will arrive before the Club World Cup or only after this competition. Then I ask if there will be room in her work group for Riccardo Piccini, considering that you have collaborated many times in the past. Thank you.
Since you are staying at the J Hotel, that's why you asked me this question. I remind you then, Riccardo is certainly a great friend, and I certainly have a lot of respect for the work that he has always done, from different points of view, and when he was at Sampdoria, he did an exceptional job. In short, all the purchases that he has managed to make now. I would have actually liked to have taken Fernandez or Chiellini. I would have actually liked to have made those purchases, at least half of the team he had. But no, he is not an option for Juventus. We are good friends. And so I know that I can turn to him and if I need something and vice versa. But at the moment, no, he is not an option. As far as other managerial positions are concerned, we are doing everything possible to accelerate the process so that we can have the technical director and sporting director. We are not talking about assistants, not about the scouts, not about the team, but about the sporting director and technical director to do everything possible to get them in place before the Club World Cup.
Massimiliano Nerozzi, Corriere della Sera. I had a question about whether, in your vision of the club, Even the youth teams at all levels should share a common reference with the first team. It was called the Ajax model, but I also know that Real Toulouse implemented it both tactically and in terms of training systems. If I may, I'd like to add a follow-up to the question from my colleague at Tudor Sport. Since around 2010, when you worked at Liverpool, and possibly because the club was bought by John Henry, who also owns the Boston Red Sox, every time you are mentioned, people say, "Ah, Moneyball, Moneyball," referring to the famous data-driven approach. I would like to know from you what is true and what has been exaggerated or fictionalized about your work. Thank you very much.
I'll start with the second question. The answer is yes. I wanted to create a culture, a methodology, a philosophy from the start, with a clear reference to the first team, including the women's team. We also discussed this with Maurizio. I believe identity is very important in today's sports sector. We deal with entertainment and create emotions, but within those emotions lies identity, feelings, and a sense of belonging to the club. Creating an identity that the club community can recognize and relate to is extremely important. This obviously comes through victories, playing style, and methodology. It's not easy. It definitely takes time, but it's not impossible. The Ajax model is not necessarily one of my favorites. We can certainly draw inspiration from different countries, cultures, and sports. But yes, like the lady who asked earlier about the club's long-term strategy, this is something I would like to implement and put into practice. Could you please repeat the second part of the question?
Yes. I was asking, since you have always been known in football circles as Moneyball Mister, one of the people who tried to bring the American sports data approach into football, despite many skeptics saying those numbers are hard to apply to football. Many teams have actually done what you tried to do with Liverpool since 2010. I wanted to know, out of curiosity, what is true, and if, as the press has sometimes reported, things were exaggerated or romanticized.
I don't know if it was fictionalized or if the press created the story. We all know the press can spin tales, but I know what we did. The Moneyball model is about making a very irrational industry like football more rational, but it's also a very schizophrenic process. We try to be rational, but at the same time, we want to create emotions. My obsession when I started using data, by the way, Mr. Moneyball himself is a friend of mine. I like baseball and the real Moneyball, not Brad Pitt's character, but the real person. I met him and we talked a lot. My frustration working many years as a scout was seeing how many poor decisions were made regarding recruitment. I wondered how we could be more precise, how we could adopt a more scientific approach to recruiting. The Moneyball principle was very useful because I saw how they bought and sold shares using data to anticipate the market, buying undervalued assets or selling when overvalued. That's the theory. It sounds nice. But we are human beings. Players and coaches have emotions, so we don't just buy and sell like stock shares. We try to adopt a scientific approach to sport, and it's proving effective. It works in Europe and in the United States as well. There's no reason to fear the association between data and football. Many clubs use data but don't openly admit it because they don't want questions. I speak openly about it because I've done it for years and it's become part of my identity. My obsession is trying to win, but also improving using data. I want to create a culture to strengthen it with my obsession to improve every single day. To improve, you need a competitive advantage over other clubs, and using data is the best way to achieve that advantage, which can lead to strong financial results and winning on the pitch. Good morning, Guglielmo Buccieri from the press. I was curious. By joining Juventus, you are entering the Italian football system, which rarely creates systemic improvements, has lost GDP and value, and is struggling to find a coach or technical commissioner for the national team. I'm not asking for a solution, but what is your reflection or perception of the Italian football system and how far behind it is compared to others? When I joined the club, I set two goals. First, to win, and second, to satisfy its full potential with continuous improvement. In every country I've worked in, Japan, England, Turkey, France, I tried to help football develop there. For example, in France, I was part of committees at the league and federation level to contribute to decisions. I don't know how familiar you are with English football, but in youth development, there is the IPPP program created in 2012, and I was on the committee that developed it. It helped improve English football, producing players like Bellingham. My first goal is to make Juventus successful, but the second is to help Italian football succeed. I want to contribute, even if only a little. I believe that if Juventus succeeds, it will contribute a lot to Italian football. Just look at history. Juventus has always made a fundamental contribution to Italian football's success. I'm not here to criticize or say what is good or bad. I've only been here 6 or 7 days. If you come to France, I could teach you how to win. It's not about suddenly knowing everything or telling people what to do. It would be a shame if Italy did not qualify for the World Cup because Italian football is synonymous with the national team. I need more time to answer fully, but if I can contribute, I want to do so through Juventus to help Italian football. Last question, sports career.
Filippo Bonsignore, Sports Courier. I wanted to ask what you think of the current squad and how many changes you believe are necessary in the market for Juventus to return to the top, especially since the club has missed the Scudetto for 5 years and the fans are eager for success.
You will likely see me often this season. I'm quite open in general, but when it comes to the transfer window, I tend to be more reserved. We discussed the squad changes with the coach, Giorgio, and Maurizio. We have an idea about the necessary adjustments. We are also considering Igor's approach. He earned 2 points per game, which if multiplied over the season would mean reaching at least fourth place, which brought the team to fourth now. This shows the team is performing at a certain level. I'm not being precise, but I can say there will be adjustments, not radical or profound transformations.
Grazie.
Thank you very much. Grazie.